always going to be in pain. I'm always going to be this crippled person.
Very violent scene at Trolley Square. Several people have been killed.
Among the dead, Kirsten Hinckley, and among the wounded, Hinckley's mother, Carolyn Tuft.
If we can visualize what pain is, we visualize Carolyn Tuft of Salt Lake City, who somehow survived the pain of 3 shotgun blasts at point-blank range.
I've got a severe pain in my back where I was shot, and that spreads across, not just in the area where I was shot, but it spreads across my whole pelvic area and both hips.
This is the X-ray of 130-some pellets still lodged in her vital organs. She spends hours just getting up, and more trying to just get enough strength to face the day. She tries to forget the pain by looking at the scrapbook of her daughter, who was shot and died while she held her.
This is my daughter Kirsten's memory book. Starts with her birth certificate. Actually ends, the last page is her death certificate, which is awful because it says manner of death, homicide. And that just gets to my soul.
Carolyn's road to a painful truth is different, but the struggles are the same as with other sufferers. Often the pain comes in one moment and lasts the rest of one's life. And in that rest of her life, Carolyn is like most pain patients. For example, it took her 8 years to get disability.
Social Security, they don't see pain as a disability. It's not in their little box that you mark, so I don't fit anywhere.
She's gone doctor to doctor, been accused of being a drug seeker, and like many, she fears going to sleep, knowing that she will wake up and it will hurt.
I get down a lot. I get depressed and I cry a lot because the pain is so bad. And I've lost my life. I've lost who I was, and I mourn not only for my daughter, but I mourn me, who I was.
It's a feeling that Grady feels on a farm in Oklahoma. His pain came in one moment after a botched routine medical procedure.
I would have, this is going to sound really bad, I would have taken matters into my own hands a long time ago. And my dad wouldn't have liked it, but he would have understood. My mother, no, she wouldn't have comprehended it.
Pain is all day, every day. In Florida, MBA CPA Crystal Weaver woke up one day with a pain that has now lasted decades. She'd give everything just for one day to be like other moms and play ball with her son.
And not being able to be there for his baseball games, I'm sorry, and do the things that he wants me to do with him, that's extremely painful.
Okay, so you got a lot of pain in there.
Yeah, it's tender.
Pain affects more Americans than any other health issue, and people won't listen. Even many doctors will not listen.
The ones who didn't believe me or simply told me go home and deal with it, it's soul-crushing.
And if providers do listen, it seems that it's only to hear that patients want drugs, powerful drugs, in pharmacies that will not fill legitimate prescriptions.
I had a pharmacist just flat out tell me, no, I won't fill your prescription, and I won't do it until a certain date, even though my insurance said it was okay, my doctor said it was okay. My doctor's been in arguments with pharmacies. I've had to change pharmacies several times. It's so frustrating. They know nothing about me. They know nothing about the disease. How dare they judge me?
If a person with pain goes in and says, I've tried hydrocodone and I've tried Aleve, and Aleve makes my stomach really upset, but hydrocodone works great, they're immediately accused of being a drug seeker. Oh my God, they know the name of the medication. They want a particular medication.
And there's such a stigma out there about narcotics.
You get outrage. I mean, it's kind of amazing. It's shocking.
In America, how can it be so bad for the voiceless who suffer in pain?
I try not to look in the mirror because it's a person I don't recognize anymore.
These are some of the people you will meet in this report and observe what they go through. You will see what we saw over 2 years, crisscrossing America, documenting those chronic pain sufferers who live in the shadows.
It's hard to keep up friendships when you're sitting in your house curled up in a ball.
Misunderstood.
Just look in my eyes and know that the pain is real.
Shunned by the stigma of often being on opioids.
We are not drug addicts. We are not drug addicts. All we are seeking is relief from pain.
Being told it's in his or her head.
It's not in my head.
Being denied insurance.
I can't for the life of me understand why insurance companies have that kind of power over people.
We found the stories from Carolyn, Grady, Marty, and Crystal, repeated in state after state.
Just because it's not visible does not mean you're not in pain.
All victims of a broken medical system that failed them, or sometimes even addicted them, one as an NFL star.
And I can see people looking at me and pointing, oh, there's that football player that went to prison. Oh, there's that football player that got hooked onto drugs.
We also found dozens of doctors and other providers who courageously spoke out against the way we treat those in pain.
To refer to it as an abomination is probably too kind.
And experts who say it's the economics of insurance that makes ours the worst pain management system in the Western world. Give them a pill and send them home. And what has to change? These are the topics we will cover in this report. Because the odds are about 1 in 3 that you are next. Nearly a third of all Americans will suffer from chronic pain.
I consider it a moral outrage. I think that our system is pitiful. I think pain medicine is a business. It's not a profession. I think that for the most part, the medical industrial complex really cares very little about the patient and a patient's suffering.
These people want to live, but they just can't stand it anymore. They have nothing to look forward to. They don't sleep, and if they do sleep, they don't want to wake up, because when they wake up, they're in such bad pain, they want to go to sleep. And they get 1 or 2 hours at a time, so now they're sleep deprived, they're depressed, they've lost everything they have, they can't leave their house. Yes, the medical system has failed these people.
I don't add value to my son's life, and he would probably be better off without me because he sees me suffer. If I didn't have my son, I would not be here.
You would not be here?
No. No.
What does that mean?
I couldn't live with this amount of pain on a daily basis. No.
And what about Carolyn Tuft? It's been years now since the shooting.
I have got lead poisoning also, so that makes me sick. So just as the years go by, the pain has gotten worse and worse to the point where I can barely get out of bed anymore.
And if you are next, you will do about anything to divert your pain.
When you're in pain, that's the only thing you can think about. I mean, it's the only thing you can process.
You will discover, first of all, it's hard to find a trained pain doctor. These people are lucky. They have found a pain clinic that is actually that, a clinic with specialists in pain. Since most go to a clinic because something hurts, most would expect medical personnel to be highly trained in pain medicine. Not so. The past president of the American Academy of Pain Medicine Dr. Perry Fine says med schools just don't teach chronic pain management.
We spend twice as much as any other society that looks just like ours in terms of, well, and our outcomes are much worse. Pain is probably amplified in that way because the vast majority of people that are treating chronic pain, through no fault of their own, they simply have not been educated to do it. We do not teach people in medical school. We largely don't teach people in postgraduate training.
The million-dollar question is why? Why do they not treat or teach pain in these schools? I can't fathom the reason why. I've asked faculty over and over and over again, you spend all these hours on all these other topics. Why is so little time treated in pain? Nobody really has the answer, but the most common response I get is, well, there's so much to cover. Okay, there's so much to cover. Well, heart disease kills people. So does pain. People take their own lives because they're in so much pain, they just can't stand it anymore.
In addition to the human cost of chronic pain,
Judy Foreman is a longtime journalist, author, and speaker at medical conventions. She says your dog's vet probably has more pain training.
the median number of hours that medical students got in basic pain education was pitiful. It was 9 out of 4 years of medical school. Even veterinary students get more than that.
Grady's family has trudged all across America for 15 years looking for treatment. They have tubs and tubs of bills and inconclusive tests to prove it.
I told him we'd get him well, and we've done everything that I can do to get him well. The places we've been, the doctors we've seen, the doctor said he was nuts, the doctor said he's drugged, and probably 5 doctors out of 100 that Grady would actually trust. He'd take their word for it and say, all right, you're the real deal.
And most of the 100 doctors did have a test, a bill, and a I can't do anything for you letter. They all end up in the dozen tubs in the closet.
Grady has the bull crap rule. He's seen enough doctors. He can walk into a doctor on the initial interview. Grady knows right then and there, so this is not the guy.
The forms they give you, they say, well, do you have a stabbing pain? I've never been stabbed. I don't know what that feels like. And mine is, the best way I could describe it is if 500 pounds is just sitting on me. And I bow over and can barely stand. I can't stand straight. Hurts to walk, it hurts to do anything.
That description just wasn't on any form with a box to check on the How Does It Hurt forms that are also in the dozens of tubs in the closet.
You get outside and he says, he's so full of bull crap, he doesn't know what's going on.
Just want to get the hell out of there as soon as possible.
Emily Redd is another of those who has gone doctor to doctor looking for someone who understands.
Okay, Mac, you got that one.
She looks normal, just like any other suburban mother. That is one of the problems for most pain patients. They look normal.
It's very difficult. It's been extremely difficult for my family and for my friends to understand what I'm going through, because to me, I look normal. But inside, my body is not normal. It's anything but normal.
It is the curse of looking normal and going to a doctor. There is no way to see pain. And again, like Grady found, how do you put all of how you feel in a little box on the form?
The pain that I felt was insurmountable. It was crazy. It changed my whole life. I had to reinvent myself. I actually had to mourn my old life because everything changed so much. It's very, very painful. I can't even put into words exactly how painful it is.
Emily was finally diagnosed with interstitial cystitis, also known as IC.
That's been the biggest battle with IC. And because IC is not a very well-known disease, it's very, very difficult to find a good physician. I've seen dozens.
It is another curse. Specific diseases of pain are often beyond most doctors' diagnostic and pain management powers. Some doctors say if they cannot see it, then it must not be there.
I've been to people that have told me that I'm crazy, that I'm thinking it up and it's not really something that exists.
It is also not easy to find a pharmacist trained in pain management. Dr. Jeff Fuden is a board-certified pain pharmacist and writes a blog dedicated to people in pain. Drugstores are a frequent topic. He says pharmacists are often novices in pain management.
They come out of school and they are wizards in treating diabetes and cholesterol and heart disease. And those are all important things. But almost everybody has pain at some time in their life. And if they get 2 or 3 hours of pain management in their entire career of school, it's like amazing. So that's an issue.
And once a person does find a trained provider, he or she has a good chance to discover the number one way to mask pain, as well as the number one way to get an insurance claim paid: opioids. Powerful drugs, controversial drugs. The patient becomes the center of everyone's conversation. One of America's premier addiction experts, Dr. Daniel Elford, says it's the one part of pain management everyone will talk about.
Welcome to my world. It's both addiction and pain. So, if you go to a dinner party and you talk to someone about diabetes or hypertension, they generally don't give their opinion about what is the best treatment for hypertension or diabetes, that this medication is better than this or this treatment is better than that.
It's more than an opinion for those who suffer.
I wouldn't survive without them. For me, what's the better of two evils? It's right. They're scary things to take, and I wish I didn't have to take them. But I wouldn't be here. I don't think I'd keep trying to survive.
Practitioners look upon New York's Dr. Russell Portnoy as the father of modern pain management. He searched for humane treatment and found opioids could mask pain in long-term patients. It opened up the debate about opioids and led to more talk about them than pain itself.
We're very concerned that fear permeating our society about the use of opioids for chronic non-cancer pain, so-called, results in a reluctance on the part of doctors and other health professionals to give access to these drugs to the patients for whom there is a worldwide consensus these drugs are the first-line therapy.
Few argue about the opioid's value for acute pain after a broken arm or even dental work.
That problem then becomes a huge problem when you've got a patient with acute pain who shows up in the emergency room, say they've got an arm fracture. And by all means, the treatment of choice would be an opioid. Not for 30 days, but maybe for a few days or maybe for a week. For that patient to be denied an opioid because either they're fearful that they're going to become addicted or their family says, oh my God, you can't give them an opioid, is ludicrous, because that's when opioids have proven efficacy and can really prevent a lot of suffering in that short period of time.
Or even opioids at the end of life. But what about the long haul?
We also know that they are very important treatments for kind of end-of-life and palliative care for comforting patients towards the end of their life. Chronic pain that isn't going to kill somebody in the near future is where the controversy lies.
Experts say there is a difference in being dependent on a medication and addicted. Research shows the majority will not be addicted. It's like those who drink liquor, most will not be addicted. The problem is finding out who will be addicted.
How do you determine if someone's truly addicted to these medications? And it's not easy. And so, this is all complicated by poor levels of education in medical school and medical training, both in pain management, but also in addiction, in identifying addiction, in screening patients for risk of addiction.
And when there is opioid addiction, life is shattered. Al Gardner knows. The former NFL All-Star is putting his life back together after ending up in prison over drug abuse. He finally found a doctor who worked with his pain without massive opioid doses. Among the dozens of deflated game balls and Super Bowl rings is a story of pain and the painful truth of over-medicating and addiction.
You can say that. Pain is a badge of honor. You know, that you come out with scratches, bruises, bumps, sprains. It's a part of the game. And when you love the game as much as I did and my teammates, that's what you have to deal with.
He says pain meds seem to be readily available in the NFL. That's also the claim in a new lawsuit against the league.
They come up to a player and say, here, give you a little envelope, and they give you, say, for example, Lortabs. Says, okay, you could take this today and that tomorrow, but make sure you're not on it while you're playing in the game.
It was at the end of his career, with the fear of being cut from the team because of pain. The badge of honor is a football player's greatest trophy.
I fell on my face, and then my legs, everything whipped back, and that's when I damaged my lower back, herniated 2 discs, and broke it.
His career was over. The crowds were no longer cheering. He sought treatment, and he sought drugs.
And the doctor would say, okay, what do you need? Blah, blah, blah. They look at your x-rays, look at your MRIs, and say, okay, we'll give you what you need.
It was a long way from the Super Bowl. He hit bottom. It was game over.
There has to be a point in someone's life to where they hit bottom. Unfortunately for me, my third one, they sent me to the state prison.
It is the headlines we see, but what about the others who won't become addicted or abuse or mix their opioids with illegal drugs? Chronic pain patient Cindy Steinberg advocates for pain sufferers through the U.S. Pain Foundation.
When I hear the word opioid, I think that this is a great medication who has helped a lot of people. I don't think of the other side that you're talking about, because my personal experience is that after my injury, and I searched for help for 5 years and couldn't find it, I didn't want to take any medication because I thought, oh my God, I'll become addicted, it's horrible, I've heard terrible stories. And a doctor that finally helped me convinced me to try medication. And it actually helped me. The only thing the medication did was dull the pain so that I could be productive, so that I could be the advocate that I am.
All we are seeking is relief from pain. That's it. And I've gone to the ER in such a desperate pain. And for me to go to the ER, I know how I'll probably be treated. 75% of the time, the doctor's like, oh yeah, right, you just want some, you want to get high.
And so while I think they benefit some patients, I know that they harm some patients. And I do believe there is a role for them, for those patients that benefit. And I do believe that we, as primary care physicians or physicians who treat chronic pain, we can determine over time who's benefiting and who's not, who's being harmed and who's not.
However, practitioners are not the only people determining who should get the powerful drugs. The political culture has declared war against opioids and those who prescribe them. The DEA is the army. The pain patients are the civilians caught in the middle. Right or wrong, the DEA is aggressively looking at pain clinics. We obtained court document after court document, all showing the results of DEA undercover work. Dr. John Coleman spent 32 years at the DEA. He is an expert in advising pain clinics. He compares the DEA investigations to a tax audit.
It's a routine pro forma thing. It's almost as if the IRS were conducting an audit. The first thing they would do is look at your income tax return. It's the same thing here. When the DEA or law enforcement agency is looking at a practitioner or a pharmacy or a hospital or a distributor or a manufacturer, the first thing they'll do is go to the records, pull the records and review the records and see what the records tell them. If the records don't support their suspicions or probable cause or whatever they might have, then of course they'll, tell the individual or practitioner or agency or corporation, you're off the hook. We've completed our investigation, and thank you very much. They'll give back the records, and that's the end of it.
Dr. Joseph Zolot would probably disagree with all that. It took 8 years, every penny he had, and 2 trials. And he was finally acquitted of all charges stemming from a raid on his Boston area office.
All of a sudden, the office door slams open, like wide open, and 3 burly guys in the civil suits with the guns just pouring into my office, screaming, yelling, face the wall, don't move, search warrant. And I thought it's a bad movie, it's a joke first, and it wasn't a joke. Taking my secretaries and everyone who worked in the office to the different locations to interrogate.
The former Soviet Union dissident had come here for the American dream. He says the Soviet KGB raids and life as a dissident actually helped him get through the U.S. federal agent ordeal that day. Did he feel they used excessive force?
It's interesting you ask. During the trial, one of the FBI agents admitted that the goal of such a presentation is to overwhelm people, is to shock them and intimidate them to the point that they would crack right away. So to say it was an excessive force is still, I think, understatement.
Commander John Berkey is a national drug enforcement expert.
I see that they think that all prescribers are probably the enemy. Certainly all pharmaceutical companies are the enemy. I think that's a kind of a mindset that I've seen kind of in DEA diversion for some time. These are our, we have to be very careful how we deal with these people. Instead of learning from them, instead of listening or talking to them and trying to, again, learn more about what legitimate pain management is, it's easier just to make those people the enemy.
The political climate right now has never been this bad, I think. I mean, I am somebody who has been advocating for the past 15 years. And right now it's gotten to the point where the conversation is so unbalanced that pain almost isn't even in the conversation.
Author and neuroscience reporter Maya Solovitz covers pain management and addiction.
What happens is people demonize a substance and then they become terrified of what will happen with exposure to that substance. They don't understand that addiction is a relationship between a drug and a person. It is not simply being exposed to a drug.
Commander Berkey says federal government agents have incentives, sort of a bounty on pain clinics.
I'm only telling you in general, something that I found out about several years ago, and that is there's bonuses involved. And this is probably always, it still disturbs me, frankly.
So how many of the raids are because of bad doctors? Or how many of the raids are because of the political culture against opioids in general? Or how many because of a potential bonus? Berkey wonders.
I go back to ignorance. I go back to incentives that I think that never should be involved in a law enforcement case. I think some people probably are looked upon as almost a prize that maybe may have some notoriety. The person may be, have a big practice or whatever.
The result is chilling.
Physicians are very reluctant in a lot of places, including my state, Washington, to prescribe anymore. So, we refer to it as narco-terrorism, whereby physicians have been terrorized. And they're just saying no to chronic opioid therapy.
I would say that the DEA agents, law enforcement, the government, they get on this bandwagon of people are overdosing from oxycodone or narcotics and we have to limit it. But they don't understand the repercussions of how it's going to affect people that actually desperately need it. And they don't have this, they have statistics about how many people die from overdoses of oxycodone, but they don't have the statistics of people that are undertreated or untreated for pain, that they take their life.
Is it all to get the maybe 15% of opioid users who abuse or illegally get this stuff?
We've still got 85% of those people need these medications, and it's up to us. You know, we're here as law enforcement. What's always been our thing? Well, we're here for the victim. We're here to protect the innocent. Well, the victim and the innocent typically are legitimate pain patients. The patient issue is so important, and we lose sight of that.
People in pain say maybe the DEA and politicians would think differently if they knew how it feels to hurt all the time.
Well, since I can't make them live 24 hours of my life, they would have a different, they'd be singing a different tune.
I want them to listen to us and hear us, those, there's millions of us who are trying to survive, who are poor because of what has happened to us. They need to make medications available to us and not make it so hard to get them and not treat us like we're drug addicts. It's the farthest from what I want to be and who I am.
And back in Oklahoma, the chilling effect also left Grady in the cold. Grady got a goodbye letter from his clinic in Utah. It's because he flies in from the Oklahoma farm. That's because a Salt Lake specialist had installed a medicine pump. There is nothing illegal about crossing state lines, but anything out of the ordinary in the pain business is a red flag, and a red flag can invite a DEA investigation.
I went up there and they informed me that this was the last time that I was going to come up there. And I said, well, do you know of anyone in Oklahoma that I can see? And they said, no. And I said, at that point I was so angry. And I said, okay, thank you very much. And I walked out.
And in Weatherford, Oklahoma, Grady went back into the shadows. After 100 doctors in 15 years, he gave up on finding another clinic.
I probably could have seen someone in Oklahoma. I didn't want to start over again.
There is a point when many pain patients have had enough. That is not a good place. Grady was willing to let his internal medicine pump run dry.
From when I first started to now, I got fed up, and I was more than willing just to let the battery run out and let it beep for a month or two and then just let it die. I was more than willing to do that.
We can report that after a year on the farm, he did find another doctor out of state, only because of his family.
My mother kept saying, find a doctor, find a doctor, find a doctor.
Some pain clinics simply said no more opioids at all to anyone. Because of the climate of fear, they don't even want pain doctors on their staffs. The fear is that next patient a doctor sees really an agent, moaning and groaning and trying to act his or her way into getting a prescription, although Dr. Zollett says they are real bad actors.
Those people they sent to set up doctors and to prove that they're criminals. Get education, guys, read about it, and maybe send someone to herniate a disc and then listen from his experience about what pain is. So you would have a little bit better understanding what people with the pain live through. I doubt it will happen.
It is not a play or a game. Lawyer Mary Vargas advocates for the disabled in Maryland. She is also a chronic pain patient. Even the legitimate patients now worry how they must act or look just to get help in this climate of fear. It has come to this. What should you wear?
People talk about what to look like when you go to the doctor, what to look like when you go to the pharmacy. Like, is it better if you look really ill, if you don't wear your best clothes, throw on the sweatpants and the t-shirt, don't go in your suit, or is it maybe better to go in the suit and look really professional? There's sort of this constant striving of how do I look like somebody that matters and that people care about?
So the doctor's office is only part of the climate of fear. Patients meet it head-on at the pharmacy. A legitimate prescription does not mean it will be filled.
The pharmacist at one point has acted like my doctor, refusing to give me medication, doesn't know anything about me, tells me that the people that are drug addicts out there unfortunately ruin it for those of us that are chronic pain patients and that do have real diseases and serious issues. Again, if I had cancer stamped on my forehead, would they question me? Probably not.
They have the prescription in hand, and with a valid prescription, they can't get the prescription filled for a variety of reasons. And usually what they're told is, for some reason, the DEA won't allow it, which is often not true. Or they're told, we're out of it, we don't have any.
Doctors are amazed. Their prescriptions are turned down or changed at the pharmacy.
And I think that if you're a qualified pain patient, then what does the DEA have to do with it? You know, when I had a problem with the pharmacy, it was the first time in my life that I really felt like the government was getting involved in my personal life.
Well, I'm smiling because when I was with the DEA and I was head of operations for the DEA, oftentimes would get letters from aggrieved patients, congressmen, et cetera, arguing that very point. Why, I have a constituent who has whatever problem and they're being told they can't get such and such because of the DEA. Oftentimes, the DEA will be used as the boogeyman in this sort of scenario because it's there and it doesn't fight back and it's kind of quiet and it's big and it's government and so forth. But the DEA doesn't do that. The DEA has no authority to do that.
And now we have this other conundrum where they may go to 5 or 6 different pharmacies in order to get the pill. Well, they're pharmacy shopping. They're doing the wrong thing and it shows up that they're doing that. Well, maybe it's not a good indication, is it?
They look at you as if you are a drug addict, plain and simple.
Most of the people that are overdosing on these drugs or not prescribed these drugs, they may be overdosing on prescription drugs, but that's because these drugs were stolen or somehow diverted.
There is confusion, there are excuses, there is fear, and there is the person in pain in the middle. Whatever the DEA, the CDC, politicians, or others are trying, it isn't working. There are still addicts. There are 17,000 opioid-related deaths every year. Doctors say the tragic figures come from misuse, abuse, or mixing prescriptions with street drugs. Heroin use has quadrupled in America, and it all seems to make it worse for those legitimate people in pain. Maya Solovitz reports it's another government blunder from the much criticized war on drugs.
What I think is going on is that the war on drugs isn't really about drugs. It's about political agendas and using the issue to send messages.
Whatever or whomever is to blame, the problem is very real for people in pain because the stigma is very real. If you are on opioids, or to use the more sinister word, narcotics, you are branded.
From patients' aspects, if they're on an opioid, they feel guilty about it. They feel like they're addicted. So that's one of the barriers for treating patients. And so there is a large stigma, and I'm hoping that we can overcome this before we have patients suffer the way they were suffering 20, 30 years ago.
Been able to go to work and get everything done that you wanted to get done?
The stigma becomes a regular topic at pain examinations. Patient Michelle Gonzalez allowed us to record her exam.
Even people I've known for years, I don't dare tell a lot of my friends what's wrong with me or what I take or the things I have to do to live with this pain. They don't know about pain. They think I have a headache or they think I have an upset stomach. I can't tell them. I can't tell them because they immediately think, oh, I had a nephew who was on drugs. Don't be like him.
Patients say you're pretty much all alone in your world with your stigma. There might be 100 million of you, but you are alone.
And now you have this life that isn't a life. RSD steals your life, but your heart keeps beating. It's not even kind enough to be fatal.
It's not like we're lazy You know, I think that we've been, people think, oh, just get up and get moving. It's not like that.
It's just a total lack of dignity and respect that really permeates the life of a person with pain. Everywhere they go, they have these added burdens that just don't apply to people with other diseases. And that's why when you talk to people who live with pain, it's very common for people to say, I know this is terrible to say, but I almost wish I had cancer. I almost wish I had leukemia. A diagnosis that wouldn't cast them in a negative light and wouldn't paint them as a bad person or an evil person or somebody who's only out to get pain medication.
People in pain feel the stigma so much they are afraid to talk about it in public. They are afraid to tell people they are on opioids. They are afraid to tell employers who will just get rid of them because they think they are faking it all. A support group meets behind closed doors in a church in Chicago. It is a safe place to admit they are pain patients. It is not unlike finding a safe place to have an AA meeting. It is a place to hide among friends, the few friends they know.
We can provide a safe space for people to feel better known, to feel understood.
They are all lonely moments, and it often just doesn't get better. Emily remembers perhaps the most lonely moment of all. It was after a doctor had done his diagnostic surgery.
I woke up screaming in the OR, and he basically came over to me and said, "You have one of the worst cases of IC I've ever seen. I don't know what to tell you except that you're to expect a horrible life. Your husband will leave you. You will live alone. Miserable life because there's so much pain and there's not anything we can do for it."
But Emily is one of the lucky ones. If there is luck in the darkness, she does have a rare support group, her husband.
Picks me up off the bathroom floor every night, carries me back to bed, gets me the heat that I need on my tummy, gets me the ice that I need, puts me in the bathtub to relieve the spasms. I'm very blessed to have such an incredible husband.
Blessed in the middle of what she said was going to hell and back. Is masking pain with opioids when you can get them and living in the shadows with a few who understand your only hope? Most of the professionals we talked to said it could be better. Better would seem to include alternative to opioid approaches like in most other countries. Often we just do opioids in America. Contrary to what it seems the government and society thinks, all patients we talk to would love to not have to be on opioids to get through a day.
I went to 2 different orthopedic surgeons and asked them to amputate my left leg from below the knee. They wouldn't do it, of course. It's pretty drastic. I actually considered getting a bucket of dry ice and putting my foot, my lower leg in it to kill it so they would have no choice but to amputate it. Alternative treatment, as I said, narcotics don't do a very good job of giving you much function. It just takes enough of the edge off to where you're not wanting to bang your head against the wall. I would love an alternative treatment.
Crystal is not the only one who would love alternative treatment. In fact, pain experts say countries that have multidisciplinary care have better outcomes. It's basically the standard in Australia, for example.
We have to look at the American system, whereby a person who has chronic pain will go in, maybe he or she will get some physical therapy. If that doesn't work, then they'll send them to someone for some injections. That doesn't work. They may play around with some courses of medications. That doesn't work, and then the doctor decides that that patient is probably crazy and sends the patient to a psychiatrist or a psychologist. In Europe, on the other hand, and in Australia and other developed nations, they provide services simultaneously.
Doctors spoke out, and they put the blame on our for-profit healthcare system. It is driven by insurance and what insurance will pay. Generally, it's for pills. That's because they are cheaper than long-term multidisciplinary care. So people in insurance just keep paying, and it doesn't get any better.
This is part of why the United States uses 80% of the world's opioid supply, because the insurance industry says it's cheap and that's what's going to be done.
And I think we need to look squarely in the eye and say, insurance carriers, public and private, where have you been? What kind of coma have you been in that you haven't recognized the extraordinary costs and how you're just pissing away millions, tens of millions, hundreds of billions of dollars a year and get nothing for your money.
The first program in the country was that at the University of Washington, and that closed down, I believe, in February of 2006. And the reason is that insurance wouldn't pay for it, and the hospital wanted to make money. And what they did is they took the space with the pain clinic and they put up little surgical booths to do cosmetic plastic surgery.
Now, biofeedback deep breathing, I think is probably the easier one to teach.
Dr. Steven Stanos has spent decades in interdisciplinary treatment.
With Medicare and Medicaid, it's even more difficult, which I think is very frustrating because we have patients that are older, let's say for like example, a Medicare patient that has hip arthritis, they need physical therapy, they need psychology, maybe they've got depression or anxiety, they're not coping well, they're trying to do the right thing, yet the coverage for services is so limited, we really can't do what we want to do. And then we're kind of stuck with just maybe providing medication.
Ethicist Michael Chapman sums it up by saying it's a mess. A dependence on opioid therapy because most insurance says no to interdisciplinary care, and then pressure to not write opioid prescriptions. What's a person with pain to do?
Patients are suffering, and patients are turning to other alternatives such as black tar heroin, suicide. Not good.
Then, just as Carolyn Tuft found during her 7 years of battling excruciating pain, that getting shot 3 times by a shotgun and losing parts of her bones wasn't considered a disability. We found similar stories throughout the country. Grady has hundreds of thousands of dollars in denied claims, $45,000 on one claim alone. And then in New York City, there is Marty, and decades of fighting insurance. He is one of the millions who was injured at work. Advocate Cindy Steinberg is not surprised to hear stories about the pain of dealing with work-related pain.
Workman's comp is a nightmare. That's all I would say. The stories I've heard are absolutely horrible.
Martin Hennessy was first injured on the job in 1993, and the surgeon declared him to be totally disabled. Further surgery and further determinations of disability followed in 1997, and a life of pain.
I wanted to kill myself because the pain was all-encompassing, and I couldn't picture living like that for the rest of my life.
And he went under the long-term care of well-known pain specialist Dr. Russell Portnoy, at the time the chair of pain management at New York's Beth Israel Hospital. In 2000, Dr. Portnoy determined the disability was permanent. In 2002, he stated that Marty was stable under a therapy of medications. A workman's comp doctor's review in 2003 found significant pain and medication commensurate with a degree of pain, and threw in a line that his doctor is preeminent in this area of pain management. Those were the first of many letters from the insurance company that was the agent for his claim. They questioned Dr. Portnoy's treatments. They red-flagged the pharmacy. No more of certain medications on the advice of an insurance doctor.
The doctor never seen me, he never examined me, and he never knew anything about me as far as my knowledge, except for maybe what they showed him, as far as notes were concerned, their notes, and it really upset me. It felt like I was being bullied.
Dr. Portnoy immediately wrote back criticizing the insurance company's evidence-based review. The company had used a 2005 edition of the physician desk reference and a 2001 textbook. He writes, "These are so out of date that one can fairly interpret the process as a disingenuous effort to pretend that an evidence review is being done, and statements are inaccurate and frankly outrageous." A hearing by the state reinstated the medications, but there are more letters in his file. It's a tug-of-war that went on for decades. And there were more hearings by the state, each stating they agree with Marty, and each time stating their decisions are final.
And the judge just took the papers from the insurance company and threw them down and said, "Please get out of my courtroom. This is such a clear-cut case of need."
Well, all was finally settled when we left Marty a year ago. We followed up a year later just to see how he was doing. Joanne says his workman's comp medications policy had transferred to a new company.
Just the day before he was supposed to receive his medicines, we were told flat out that they weren't going to approve them.
They didn't say anything about my claim except that they wanted to bring me back to court.
So is there any hope for those living in a broken system? America does have some programs that have practiced multidisciplinary care for decades. The Rehabilitation Center of Chicago has had some success with biofeedback.
This is how your skin temperature going up because you're relaxing.
Mirror therapy.
Feels like I'm not putting any effort doing it, and it's not any pain.
And physical therapy, where one works on what injured him or her in the first place. Graduating patients get back to their lives.
This means a lot, and I want to thank everyone in the staff for giving me the opportunity to learn from you and apply it to my life.
And like in all medicine, hope lies in research, and the National Institutes of Health offers little in research.
The basic numbers at a high level, about $32 billion or so is the NIH budget, and about little over 1% of that goes towards chronic pain, goes to pain research. Somewhere around $300+ million a year. Most of us feel that that's terribly inadequate, that we, for a condition that affects 100 million Americans, more than diabetes, heart disease, and cancer combined, that there should be a significant increasing in the amount of money that goes to pain research.
With so many suffering, why haven't the people in pain been heard?
For a long time, people have said that nothing is going to change in the way people with pain are treated unless patients and their families and their loved ones rise up and fight back and demand better care. But the problem is, how can you start a movement when the people who are supposed to rise up can't get medication, can't get treatment, can't get doctors? They're stuck at their homes without jobs and without financial means, and there's no way for them to rise up together. And God forbid somebody funds that effort, well, then the effort becomes suspect.
When we traveled America to hear stories, we heard the painful truth from doctors.
Our politicians need to wake up to this. Our insurers need to wake up to this. People running our research institutions, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, our universities, our medical schools, our training facilities. We need to wake up to this.
We heard the painful truth from fathers.
Normalcy is not anymore when you have someone with chronic pain.
And from mothers.
We have to help them. We have to believe them, and we have to help them.
And from those who live the painful truth with only hope for a better life.
I'd like to believe that. I really do hope there is, because pain has taken me out of more than half of my life. I am 32 years old. This started when I was 15. It has dominated for 17 years. And I have to hope that they will find something, or they will, because another 60 years of this it's not very promising.
They all say there has to be a voice and not just the cries of pain.
I'm always going to be in pain. I'm always going to be this crippled person, and I'm always going to be poor and have to fight for medications and the right to get medications and fight just to live. It's exhausting. It's exhausting to be in pain, and it's exhausting to keep trying so hard to be here.
You know, I was a relatively young person. I was hoping that I might find a life partner, maybe remarry. I don't have hope for that anymore. Who wants somebody that has a chronic pain disease that's always suffering? I would be a very hard person to live with, because who wants to see somebody in agony all the time?